This program on investing under regulation crowdfunding is not investment advice.
Rising with the crowd, power unbound, change makers lead where hope is found. Superpowers for good, shaping the fate. Investors and dreamers open the gate. Super Crow stands loud, proud and true, building tomorrow for me and you.
Welcome, everyone, to the Superpowers for Good show by the Super Crowd. I'm Devin Thorpe, your host, and we're just so excited to share today. I've got just a phenomenal entrepreneur and founder on the show. His name is DeBenedette, and he's the founder of Abby. It's a super high-tech, low-cost powered wheelchair. This is so cool. You don't want to miss this one. John, welcome to the show. We're just thrilled to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Well, yeah, this is, I'm really excited about what you're doing and feel like you're going to change the world with this business. Give us kind of a quick overview, if you would, of Abby in this chair.
Sure. So Abby is, we call it a smart wheelchair. And what that means is a traditional wheelchair updated with some cameras and sensors to increase safety and connectivity with the cloud. And that enables us to develop apps to extend the reach of family and caregivers. And it allows the wheelchair to come alive and maybe help stave off cognitive decline or ask simple questions and record the answers into the cloud. And that extends the reach of the folks who have loved ones that depend on a wheelchair.
Yeah, it really is exciting to think about this, but I think there's an aspect of this that maybe I inferred incorrectly, but I think the chairs are not only better in some meaningful ways than kind of the state of the art, if you will, but they're cheaper.
Well,
right?
that's actually part of what we're trying to accomplish. You know, I like to think of our angle on disrupting this kind of decades old inefficient industry is an expansion play, right? The incumbent, let's call it the wheelchair industry, has chosen to rely on medical device regulation. So power chairs, as opposed to manual wheelchairs. A manual wheelchair is just a cart, but a motorized wheelchair, in many countries, developed nations, they're regulated as medical devices, class 2 medical devices. And that's actually, for a good reason, good intent. I think in the 70s, when the regulation regimes were up and coming, maybe battery electric vehicles were a little dangerous, right? They could run away. They could have uncontrolled movement. Maybe they catch fire, and the person who's restricted to a seated position can't jump out of the chair. So thus the regulation. But we're now in 2024, where battery electric vehicles are ubiquitous, electric bikes and scooters and you name it. So that regulation has become more of a sword and a shield, and the industry uses it to overprice, underproduce, and so what we have is an effective status quo that is a scarcity model, and the supply side of the industry woefully underproduces powered wheelchairs. Let me give you some stats. You go to the Wheelchair Foundation website, you'll see 130 million people must have a wheelchair right now on Earth. If you go to our government's community living agency, Association for Community Living, you'll see that of the over 65 demographic, per capita basis, extrapolate to the world, there are 350 million people over 65 who self-identify as having difficulty walking. They often buy mobility scooters. Okay, so that's almost 450 million people who either must have or can use a wheelchair. The industry, $14 billion in turnover, manufactures 10 million wheelchairs per year. If that's not a scarcity model and a tragedy, I don't know what is. That's why we've priced Abby substantially below anything comparable, and therefore it's an expansion play.
Yeah, it can address this, and I've traveled in some of the developing world, and I've seen the tragedies. Right, that there are countless people who
Yeah.
should be.
Yeah, I mean, wheelchair, the need for a wheelchair, the need for a wheelchair affects all nations on a per capita basis. There's no difference. What's different is the supply of the products is concentrated in the developing countries, because that's the business model of the incumbents is to have less units at higher prices. And we want to change that, and that's what you're investing in when you invest in Abby.
It's you've got some cool technology going on. Explain, if you can,
Sure.
how the tech works.
Yeah, so as you can see, Abby is essentially based on that manual wheelchair format, because a chair that cannot be pushed from behind or self-propelled is maybe it's great in where you can guarantee that your lithium battery is always charged and it's going to be serviced, right? But in the developing nations, a manual chair is really what's necessary. So Abby is a hybrid manual power chair that's light enough to fold up and go in the trunk, yet at the same time has powerful motors that can propel, a 300-pound user up a steep slope. And so that's why we based Abby on the traditional manual chair format. And that's actually important. That's an important part of getting to a mass adoption in developing countries.
And I've never operated, never had the situation where I needed a chair, although my wife has needed a chair off and on over her life, and at different times. And it seems to me that the typical power chair doesn't incorporate some of the key smart features that you're building into yours.
Yeah, the smart
it's
technology.
A big forward move there, right?
Yeah, and it's fairly simple stuff, right? We're looking at the things that your car can do. I mean, the ability to configure a safety buffer zone around a moving vehicle with sensors and take some kind of action, whether it's just to make an audible alert or to stop the motion. That's pretty straightforward tech. The reason it has not yet moved onto the powered wheelchairs of the day is partly because of the situation I mentioned, right? They've outsourced the controller technology to save costs, and the controllers, the software that runs the wheelchair with the joystick there, is made by a few companies that supplies all the brands of wheelchairs. When we started developing Abby, we created our own controller from a clean slate drawing board, in order to have the number one agility to implement sensor safety and connectivity with the cloud for apps, as I mentioned, and it gives us a cost of goods advantage, because the wheelchair brands that sell those power chairs have to license that controller technology from third-party companies, and so it actually becomes a part of the chair they don't make much of a profit on. So they're inagile, and they don't control their own roadmap of features, and they have a pass-through cost that gives us a competitive advantage, we think.
Well, yeah, it can be really profoundly important to have some of this basic technology that maybe could have been added to power chairs 20 years ago or 10 years ago. It
Sure,
still
10
isn't
years
there.
ago, yeah, and it'll follow. I mean, look,
Yeah.
we're dealing with a scarcity, such a scarcity of these products that there'll probably be, 10 successful, assistive technology unicorns besides Abby. But so that that massive unmet need is going to take more than one company to fill. But we're happy
Yeah.
to be leading the charge.
Now, speaking of leading the charge, you are open for investment. You've got a campaign going on StartEngine right now.
Yeah,
How
just
did you
once.
decide to raise capital from the crowd?
Well, we feel that's an important. So number one, we think it's a great opportunity to develop a little brand awareness, right? So we've done all the R&D and molds, tooling. We're ready to manufacture. We're just finishing up our FDA pre-market notification. We filed our patents for industrial design and one software patent. So we're ready to launch. And I'd say the notion of equity crowdfunding, makes a lot resonated with us because number one, we're going to be trying to get brand awareness so we can find investors who are potential customers. Everybody has somebody they know or in their family who might potentially benefit from Abby in the future, now or in the future. And our philosophy is, we're trying to look at an expansion play, mass adoption of the product, and so the crowd, it makes perfect sense for us in terms of a way to raise capital as well as to just get brand awareness.
Well, and it's a great opportunity, I think, for investors to at least to take a serious look at this because of, this is for impact folks, an interesting marriage of real, genuine impact, right? You have an aspect not only of public health, right? Making chairs more affordable and accessible to more people, public health benefit.
Absolutely.
But also it's a kind of a social impact from a poverty standpoint,
Correct.
right? Because you can make chairs available to people who otherwise couldn't afford
we
them.
can improve people's lives, right? I mean, look, in many parts of the world, the difference between having a wheelchair and not having a wheelchair is the difference between being in bedridden or on the floor somewhere. And so if we can, and of course the answer is a manual chair, right? That somebody can push from behind or self-propel. We want to bring, there's no reason in 2024, given the state of brushless motors and lithium batteries, ubiquity, commoditization, there's no reason that the first chair somebody gets isn't a motorized chair, right?
Yeah.
And all the great reasons I spoke about earlier for Abby. But this is, it's a huge unmet need, therefore tremendous economic opportunity with a decidedly strong social impact dimension.
Yeah. And, I would point out, my parents spent 18 months in Russia, 15, 20 years ago, doing kind of social impact work. And one of the things they did was to give low-income people wheelchairs. And one of the surprising things was how often they didn't get used. And it's because they're not self-propelled, right? You aren't autonomous.
That's right.
If you can crawl around on the floor autonomously.
I've heard stories like that. It's a common thing actually, where the wheelchair is more useful as a vending cart to the family than it is actually for the person in need. Look, I mean, that's there's always going to be stories like that, and I think the takeaway from stories like that is they have to be power chairs, have to become affordable in broad terms, such that we're not relying on a supply side constrained industry that overprices and underproduces, and then philanthropic capacity shouldn't be the way, people in the developing worlds get the products. It should be a marketplace, and by slashing the price of a basic power chair and a hybrid, and combining it in that form factor that we believe is the best form factor, we can make a huge difference.
Yeah, it's tremendous. Well, listen, we're going to take a quick break here, folks. I'm here with John DeBenedette, and he is the CEO and founder of Abby. This is a great, exciting company making these hybrid power wheelchairs that can be readily pushed from behind. Very exciting. A crowdfunding campaign happening now, and offering on StartEngine. You got to check that out. s4g.biz/Abby will get you there. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be talking to John about his superpower. Stick around. You don't want to miss this.
You can get in on the ground floor to help fix the climate crisis for as little as $100. Pause now to scan the QR code to get started, or visit s4g.biz/raisegreen. You can beat a green at Raise Green.
Want to learn from the world's great change makers? Find your superpower. Subscribe to the Superpowers for Good newsletter at superpowersforgood.com. Make your strengths into superpowers that will change the world. Join the super crowd today. Superpowers4good.com.
Hope to raise money from the impact crowd. Good investors are as interested in community, social or environmental impact as you. Connect with Funding Hope, an SEC-registered FINRA member crowdfunding portal, to learn how to raise capital from the impact crowd. Scan the QR code now.
Welcome back, everyone. We're here today with John DeBenedette. He is the founder and CEO of Abby, which is a company that is making power hybrid electric wheelchairs. This is so cool. But we're going to shift gears now and talk to John about his superpower. So stick around for this. You don't want to miss it. John, I really admire what you're doing, and you are doing some truly, truly inspiring work, and I'm excited to see what you're doing. I wonder, though, John, if as you reflect on the tremendous career you've had and the successes you've had, what do you see as your superpower?
Well, I've been, I've been lucky in many, it's funny. There's a Marvel film where one of the heroes has the superpower of good luck. Well, I certainly have had a lot of luck in my life. When I was a young man, I had a motorcycle wreck, and I lost a chunk of my left leg. I can walk, albeit a little limpy, and that created, I guess, the early seed was planted because I used the wheelchair for the better part of a year, and I shopped for power products at the time, rehabbed myself, and I went on and had a software career. And I was lucky to have an exit in 2018, and synchronicity or serendipity, depending on how you look at it, at the time, a couple of people in my life, and my co-founder, Dr. Clarence Tan, who does a lot of health tech investing. We were face to face with people in our lives who were facing mobility impairments, and we saw, I saw that the market hadn't changed. The products were circa 1980s. In 2018 it was 1980s technology, overpriced, underproduced, regulated medical devices instead of battery electric vehicles. Meanwhile, the e-bikes and the drones and the scooters are proliferating, and wheelchairs are stagnating. So what's my superpower? Well, I think, the universe gave me a limp and experience, and the ability to see the potential hiding in plain sight for this little niche of motorized vehicles to be broken loose, and that's why we started this business. Is that a superpower? I don't know. I think yeah. It's just smart and needed by the world.
Yeah, I think it's a profoundly important discussion. And I'm grateful that you shared that, because I think all of us, uh, some of us have unusual limitations that may be atypical in some way, but all of us have limitations.
Indeed.
And as we age, and I've got a little gray hair, right? You can tell. I encounter new new limitations all the time. How can we? I want to think about, John, how you have kind of leveraged your experience in this particular case. Have you been able to use that experience or other
Well,
experiences
let me say that my
to
professional
learn other things?
career, yeah, my professional career was actually as a software executive, and I was fortunate to be involved in a big industry scale platform company for container shipping. And so there was a big SaaS business, with tens of millions of transactions, global scale. Um, and I was a CTO, and I also did some time as the chief commercial officer. But that experience, understanding technology, allowed me to start this Abbey project. And instead of following the status quo in terms of the product design paradigm, the idea that we can create our own controller, implement the robotics and the connectivity and the machine vision, came from my experience as a CTO. So I was willing to take the risk, of course, funding it largely, myself initially, to take the risk and create a brand new controller. So actually, Abby's wheelchair controller, when we filed for a patent on that, is the first new wheelchair controller to be created since the 80s, we think, right? Because all the major wheelchair brands use one of two competing controller tech stacks. So that's where I've been able to kind of recycle my professional career experience. And it's a challenge because when you're dealing with embedded systems, a lot of the software that runs on on devices and clock radios and microwave ovens and 3D printers, that kind of software development generally lacks full stack web developers. So the kinds of developers I was hiring as a CTO making cloud software and SaaS business software, that's not what you find when you go to make hardware control, right? And I felt like a salmon swimming upstream because I wanted all that stuff in a Git repo. I wanted daily check-ins. I wanted nightly builds. I wanted to run it like a software shop. And I wound up having to kind of create that infrastructure myself because a lot of the embedded systems programmers are very, they work on their laptops, electrical engineers. They keep all the file. It doesn't work in a collaborative way. But I needed to inject cloud computing and app integration, right? So maybe that's my superpower.
Yeah. That's great. Now, can you give us a tip that would help us kind of channel our own experiences, our own limitations, to reframe them and use them as opportunities? How do we do that?
I believe I was blessed and lucky to have gone through a injury and a rehabilitation cycle. It made me understand how small my world was when I was in a chair. Certainly, you have to, think about the challenges you've needed to overcome in your own life. Perhaps there are opportunities there, if not for entrepreneurship, for service. That's a way of life, I think.
Yeah. So true. So true. Well, great tip. Listen, as we wrap up here quickly, tell us how people can learn more about the chair, how they can learn more about investing.
Well, by all means, again, we're firmly committed to the notion of sharing our future successes with people who share our vision. And that's why we chose to crowdfund on the StartEngine platform. So by all means, follow that link. Take a look at our product. You can check out our website. It's abbychair.com. Yeah, I'd be happy. My calendar link is there. You guys can book a Zoom, and I'd be happy to deep dive on our business plan and our future with anybody who's interested.
Yeah, great tip. Great tip. Take advantage of that offer. Jump on the website, grab a meeting, learn more, or visit s4g.biz/Abby. Listen, John, thank you so much for being with us. We wish you every success.
Thank you so much, Devin. Really great to talk to you today.
All righty, let's do some